If you want to be successful in the IT field, you're going to want to know how to work with APIs, and that's exactly what I'm going to show you in this video. If you're unfamiliar with what API stands for, it stands for Application Programming Interface, and it's a way for applications to talk to each other. When working with APIs, you can use tools like Postman or Insomnia, but if you want to take things a step further, you should be using a programming language like Python. This will allow you to completely automate anything that has an API available. And almost every tool nowadays has an API that you can use. Today we're going to have a look at an API offered by Coinmarketcap, and it's going to allow us to pull the price data of cryptocurrencies. Now if you don't care about cryptocurrencies, that's fine. This video will still be applicable to you as most APIs follow a similar standard and format. So you're going to be able to take what you learn in this video and apply it to any API that you're working with. The first thing we're going to do is pull up the documentation for the API. After that, we're going to create an API key. This is going to allow us to make API requests to the Coinmarketcap API servers. After that, we're going to create the Python script that works with the API. Let's go ahead and jump into the tutorial.
Alright, so we're going to start off with a little RTFM. We're going to read the documentation for Coinmarketcap API, and the documentation for Coinmarketcap is actually pretty good, and it's going to be very similar to any type of API documentation that you come across in the industry. So we'll have a quick look at that. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to grab an API key. We need an API key to talk to the API server. So we're going to grab that, and we're also going to import our modules into Python. The module that we're going to be using for this script is requests. So if you're not familiar with it, stick around and I'll show you how it works. And once we get our requirements imported, we're going to just do a basic test. Make sure we can talk to the API server and pull some information from the API server. And then after that, we're going to build up a class so we can easily make our REST API calls. Now, this is something that a lot of people don't do when they're working with API servers, but it's something that you should do. You really want to create classes so you have objects that you can work with. And it just makes your life so much easier when you're maintaining the code and when you're just scripting things out. So I'm going to show you the way that I do it, and if you can implement it into your workflow, I'm sure it will help. So let's go ahead and get started and have a look at the documentation here. So this is the basic documentation for CoinMarketCap. You can get there just through this URL /API/documentation. And it gives you a basic introduction, quick start guide, and everything like that. It gives you example code, and you can see I have the Python one open, but there's Java, C#, Go, and whatever you need. Having a look at this, you can see that it basically imports the request module, sets the URL, sets some parameters, and sends off the request. So this is very similar to what we're going to be doing. I'll go ahead and show this in the code editor. The next thing you want to do is actually generate your API key. But before we do that, the first thing you're going to want to do is generate your API key. So if you just go to the top and hit login, you should be able to create an account, and it'll bring you to a page like this. And you'll just want to go over to overview, and you should have a generate key button. Just generate your key, copy it over, and put it into your code editor. So I'm going to do that right now, and I'm just going to create a new file here, and I'm going to call it secrets.py. And I'm just going to call it API_key. And I'm just going to copy over that API key off screen. So heading back here and going over to the CoinMarketCap API, we can go over here and we can search. So let's go ahead and search for cryptocurrency. And it looks like we found it here. And you can see that it has all the API endpoints for any cryptocurrency that you want information on. So let's have a look at this first one and click it right there. And you can see it gives you this endpoint URL, and it tells you the payload that it sends back on a success, as well as the ones when it is not a success. So you got your 400 messages and your 500. So having a look at this one, it returns some JSON data, which can be easily brought into a dictionary in Python. So the first thing in that dictionary is this data field, and then within that it's a list of dictionaries, and you have Bitcoin, Tether, Binance Coin. So it looks like it's just returning a list of cryptocurrencies. Over on the left you can see there's query parameters, and basically these are just parameters or variables that you can send in your request, and those parameters are going to affect the way that it sends this payload back to us. So having a look at this parameter, which is limit, it looks like you can limit the amount of data that you get back. So if you just wanted the top 10 cryptocurrencies, you could set it to 10 and it would just give you back the top 10. And it looks like you can set the symbol, so you could set the symbol to BTC, and that should just return the information for Bitcoin. So anyways, that's enough of the documentation. Let's go in and actually start working with this API. Okay, so we are in our script, so we've read the manual. So I'm just gonna take this out and I'll leave this like this. It's always good to have a reference in your script of the documentation, so I like to leave that in there. And then up above, I'm going to import our modules. So I'll go import requests. And now I also want to import our API key, which we have in that secrets file. So we're going to go import secrets. And now we'll be able to access that API key variable. So let's clean this up a little bit. And we've imported our modules. So let's take that out. All right, so the first thing we want to do when we're sending a request is we need to know where to send this request. So we need to grab the URL. So let's grab that from the API documentation. So we'll head on back here, and you can see here that it gives the endpoint URL, but if we click, it gives the entire URL. So let's just go copy and go URL equals and just paste that in. So the next thing we want to do is create a request object. So let's go r equal requests dot get, which is the method for doing a HTTP GET request. Now in some APIs this would be enough, but since CoinMarketCap requires an API key, we need to set that in the header. So let's go ahead and have a look at the documentation again. And I believe it was in the Quick Start Guide. So go to Quick Start Guide and you can see that it sort of sets the headers. So let's grab it from their code actually. And let's just put that here. So the headers are accepts, and it accepts application/JSON, and then it also wants you to set this API key. Now they have an example API key here, which does not work. So we need to put in our API key. So I'm going to take this out and I'm going to go secrets dot API underscore key. And this is going to set our API key to this header. Now we need to go into our request and then set headers equals headers. Now this should be enough to have a look at the data. So I'm going to go ahead and open up a Python console here, just so we can test this out. And let's just copy and paste this code in. So it looks like it accepted that. So one thing we can do is r.status underscore code, and I need to spell that right. Okay, so we know that the status code is 200, so it's okay. So the next thing we're going to do is have a look at the actual data. And the best way we can do that is go r.json, because this is going to be JSON formatted data. So let's go ahead and do that. And it's actually going to return us a Python dictionary, and we can access all the data in here, just like we would access any Python dictionary. So you can see it gives a lot of data here. Let's go ahead and print this out nicely. So I'm going to use the module prettyprint. So I'll go from pprint, import pprint as pp, and I'll go pp here, trying to say that with a straight face. We went pp, let's go r.json and print it out. And now you can see it prints out much nicer, but there's still a lot of results. There was actually a dictionary, and the first key value pair of that dictionary was data. So we'll go data, and then we want the first entry in data. So I'll print that out, and you can see it's Bitcoin, and you could just sort of go through the list here and see all of the different cryptocurrencies. So that's pretty good. We've tested basic functionality with the API server, but if we don't want our code to turn into spaghetti code, we want to start using classes. And this is going to allow us to implement a lot of functionality into our API object. So to start off a class, we just go class, and then we give it a name. So I'll go class CMC. And you don't specify a parameter or anything like that. Now, the first thing we're going to do in our class is we're going to create the init function. And this init function is used when you first substantiate an object. And basically, we're going to set all the parameters that we sort of want used in our other functions that we're going to create within our class. It's going to make more sense as we move along in the video. Just follow along and it should make sense. So let's go def _init _, and we're going to set two parameters here. It's going to be self, and the next one is going to be token. Now let's just do that, and I'll just say pass, and I'm just going to quickly type out so it makes sense how we're going to substantiate this class object. Basically what we would do is just go CMC, this is just a variable name, and we'd go equal, and we'll go CMC, and then we'll pass it the token name, which is actually going to be this secret API token. So I put this here now to sort of illustrate the flow, but basically we're creating this object based on this class, and we're passing the token to it. That brings us to this class over here. It hits the init function and sends that token there. Okay, so I hope that makes sense, and it should make it a little easier to follow if you're not used to working with classes. So the next thing I'm going to do is set some variables here that we're going to reference a lot in our other functions. So the first one I'm going to set is for this base URL, since we're going to be using it for all our requests. So let's go self.api URL equals, and let's copy and paste that. The next one is these headers. So I'll go self.headers, and let's pull this, paste it here, and then let's just put this all on one line. We don't really care about PEP8 too much. Now after that, let's go ahead and create a session. And basically what a session is a request object, and it just sort of allows you to reuse the request object. So what we need to do is go to the top here and go from requests, import session. Now the next thing I want to do is, instead of using this request, I actually want to create a request session. You can do it the request way, but using a session is just sort of a best practice. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's scroll to the top and go from requests, import session, and it's with a capital S. And then let's go down here and we'll go self.session equals session. And now the last thing we want to do is go into our session. So it's self.session. And then within that session, we can set the headers. So it's headers.update. And then we specify the headers. So we'll go headers equal headers. And this just makes it so whenever we call a request, we won't have to set the headers like we did here. We only have to do it this one time. And now any future requests that we make, the headers are already going to be set. So that's one of the benefits of using this session object. So this should be good enough. I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste this into my code just sort of to test it out and make sure I don't have any errors. So we'll paste that in. And it looks like I have an error. And I think it was just the way it copy and pasted in. So let's do that. Okay, it accepted the class. Now let's copy this in. And we can see that it doesn't like this because we didn't actually copy and paste this in. We got that pasted in now. Let's paste this in. And then here. So now we have this CMC object. Now you can sort of see that we can access all these variables and we just have them available to us. So we have the API URL. We can look at the headers, and we have this session object. So basically the session object is from the request library, and we can use this object to make requests to our API server, and it's going to have this header set which has our API token. So basically what we want to do next is functionalize all those calls that we found on the documentation. So if we go back here to cryptocurrency, we can basically take all these and turn them into functions, and that way we will be able to easily call them. So let's create the first one, and it was this mapping one. So I think it was just returning the coins. So I'll just go def get all coins. Let's add some lines here. And this is a function within this class. So whenever you're doing that, you want to set self. And this one doesn't take any parameters. It just goes to the URL. So let's correct this spelling error. And then let's go down here. We're going to set the URL. So we'll go URL equals self.api URL, which is the base URL, plus, and then let's just take this. So this is the endpoint portion of the URL. So we'll take this and put it in here. So the next thing we can do is take this session up here, which is self.session, and we're going to do a GET request, very similar to what we did up here, and we're going to send the URL, and let's assign that to a variable R, and that is going to send the request to this URL. Now for the next line, we want to clean up the data a bit. If you recall, when I actually called it before, see if we can get back to it, you can see that the actual data that we wanted was under r.json and then /data. So let's grab that, and we'll just say data equals r.json data. And now we can return data. So this looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and copy it and paste it into our idle session and resubstantiate this object. And now if we go cmc dot get all coins, and we can see that we have an error here, and it's sort of giving away my API key. So let's clear that up. All right, so I ran the code and I ran into a few errors, and it took a little bit of troubleshooting, not gonna lie, but I saw quite a few different errors. I'm sure a lot of you were yelling at me through the screen and just being like, why are you typing it like that? That makes no sense. Let's go ahead and fix these together. It's gonna be great troubleshooting. So the first one is obviously this one. It looks like my copy and pasting got ahead of me. Let's take this out. Obviously, that's not how you assign a variable. The next one has to do with scope. So I copy and pasted this from up above, but I actually need to change this to the local variable of token. So that's the next error. And then we have one more here, which is this headers. Let's take this out. And we actually want to reference the self variable. So we'll go self.headers. And the next one is a little embarrassing. I called this APY instead of API. I don't know, guys. It's getting pretty late here. But anyways, that should fix all the problems. So let's go ahead and rerun this. But before I do, let's import that prettyprint module. So we'll go from pprint, import pprint as pp, and we'll go to the bottom and we will pretty print, and we'll throw in that CMC object, and we'll say get all coins. And now let's go ahead and run this and cross our fingers. And there we go. It returned almost all the coins. That's all your cryptocurrencies right there, I guess. So let's go ahead and add more functionality. And as we add more functionality, you're going to see why using classes is just so awesome. So for the next one, let's make it a little more interesting. Let's get the actual price, and let's go ahead and set it so we can send a parameter to the API. So it returns us information based on that parameter. So heading back here, let's scroll up, and I think quotes latest is the endpoint we want. So let's go ahead and grab this and have a quick look at the parameters. And it says symbol, and you see you can just send a symbol. Looks like you can do comma separated, so you can do like BTC, F, any of the coins you want. We'll go ahead and just test this with... Alright, so my camera died there, and I know you guys love seeing my pretty face, so I replaced the batteries and we're ready to go again. So having a look at this documentation, you can send a symbol, and within that parameter you can give it, looks like, any amount of cryptocurrency symbols, and it's going to return you the prices for that. So let's go ahead and build a function within our class to take advantage of this endpoint. So I will grab this again, put in my clipboard. Now, before we paste that in, let's get a function ready. So we'll call this one get price. And then let's paste in that URL. And then we're going to make it similar to this one up here. So we'll go URL equals. So we'll go URL equals self.api URL plus this endpoint. Now let's go up here and set self, and we actually want to add an additional parameter here, and that's going to be the symbol. So we'll be able to send the symbol Bitcoin, Ethereum, or whatever their ticker symbol is, and this is going to pull back the data of that coin. So we'll go down here, and a lot of this is just copying and pasting. You know you're a good programmer when you can just copy and paste a lot of your code. So we have our function just about ready. There's one additional thing we need to do here, and that is to take this symbol and send it as a parameter to the request. So let's create a dictionary object here, and we'll go parameters equals, and we'll say symbol, and it will get assigned that symbol variable. And then down here in the actual request, we'll go params equals parameters. And I believe this should be enough to get it working. So let's go down here and change it from all coins to get price. And we're going to send it a symbol. So we'll say BTC. Now let's go ahead and run the code. And I think I did not copy and paste something incorrectly. And that is true. It's missing this slash. So I guess I'm not as good of a copy and paste programmer as I thought. Let's go ahead and run this again. And there we go. We get our coin back. I think there's a lot of information. Well, I guess these are tags to describe what the coin does. You can see Bitcoin is a store of value. It uses SHA-256, POW, which is proof of work mineable. So lots of interesting information about Bitcoin here. And then price, of course, what everyone's interested in, and I guess just your volume, and then just a whole lot of other data. So let's go ahead and move this down and zoom out of my code a bit. It's a little large here. And I will take this stuff out because it's not required. And one thing I like to do is take this and put it in here just so I know the documentation. Since a lot of my scripts do make use of a lot of different classes, I sort of like to paste in like any documentation that I build those classes around, just so it's easy to reference when I'm troubleshooting code. It's very helpful when you're troubleshooting someone else's code and they do something like this. It just makes life a whole lot simpler. Anyways, that's all I really wanted to show for this video. I just sort of wanted to start from scratch with a new API and build up a script that uses that API. If you found this video helpful at all, please go ahead and hit that like button for me. I really appreciate it. And if you want to learn more about IT or anything DevOps related, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next video.